Hi, this is Jessie. I'm here to do the animation tutorial that I promised M and Wolf Murderous. Yeah, I'm sorry these took so long. If you read the description of my free mask video, you'd know that I had problems with screen capture recorders and all of that. But Wolf Murderous gave me a program and helped me out, which shout out to them. So I can finally do it, and I actually have time to do it, kind of, not really. Um, so I'm gonna do this in a two-parter. The first part is gonna be just, I guess, the techniques and tools that I usually use. Just an explanation of everything. I mean, from the little bit I've animated, I've noticed that it's just the same thing over and over again. It's like masking, recoloring, and then keyframing or puppet tool or whatever. So I'm just going to go over all of that, and then the second part will be me actually animating something, so you can kind of see like the full thing. It's like just under 2 hours long, the full thing, so yeah, I have to condense that down to 15 minutes, so I'll probably do another link so that you can see the full thing if you actually want to watch it in normal time. So yeah, let's get started. So the first tool that I use, that if you're in the AMV community or your MMV community or anything like that, I'm pretty sure you already know, is masking. The shortcut for masking is G, and it's pretty straightforward. It's to cut a certain part of a picture or footage out of there, so you only have that, like to mask a head or the body or whatever. In AE, you just plot the points, and I guess the only thing really noteworthy to say about plotting points is that if you hold down your cursor and like drag it, then you can get a curve. Um, Other than that, I guess something that you should know is that you can make it so that the masks are different colors every time you do a point, which is really helpful in animating, because if you're like me, you will mask a lot and will have like 18 fucking masks on one layer, and it's really confusing when they're all the same color. So to do that, to change the colors, you just have to go to edit, then preferences, then appearances, then cycle mask colors. And another thing you can do is you can change the path point size. And to do that, you need to go to edit, preferences, general, and then you can change the size of it to make it bigger or smaller or whatever your preference is. Another thing to note is that the different modes of masking. The only ones that I use are add, subtract, and intersect. I think everyone knows add and subtract. Add is to mask out a certain point, and subtract is to have everything in the picture except what you masked. Intersect is basically if you have masks previous to that, say if you masked a body out of the picture and you masked that, and then from the body you want to mask specifically just the head. So you mask over it, and then you can go to intersect and it'll mask it just so it's just the head, if that makes any sense. There's other modes too, like darken, lighten, and difference, but I've never used them and I don't know what they do, to be honest with you, so you can look that up. The next one is the paint tools. I don't know if they're actually called that, but I just call them that. There is the brush tool, the clone stamp tool, and the eraser tool. And they're pretty much exactly what they sound. This is so helpful. The brush tool, well, okay. Basically, to use all of them, you have to double click a layer and go into the layer tab. And then you can either use the brush tool to paint over the layer, or you can use the clone stamp tool, which you have to hold down Alt at some point and then click a different spot, and you can paint it, and it'll like mirror what you're painting over in a different spot. I don't really know how to explain it properly. And then the eraser tool is pretty self-explanatory tool. It just erases. One thing you need to know is that if you're painting or erasing or whatever, make sure that when you do it, you're at the start of the layer before you click the layer. Also make sure it's on full quality. If you don't start painting at the start of the layer and you do it like say in the middle, the paint tool will only like show up in the point that you start it. So the first half would have no paint tool effect and the second half would have it. And if you do that, then the way to fix it is you go to the layer that you painted on and you press E, and that will pull up your effects options. And then you just go to paint and drag, scroll down or whatever, and you just have to extend the paint layer so that it's on the full thing. So the next tool is the puppet tool, which is kind of, I think everyone knows that for AE. It's the tool that most people use. Personally, I find it looks better in moderation, like if you just use it for small things, like making eyes blink or moving fabric, like say if you're pinching a sweater and you're like getting that one point of the sweater and extending it out, or if you're animating hair or mouth or whatever, just small things when you need like a certain point of something to be expanded, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's what I personally think it looks good with. I don't really have much to say other than that. If you don't know how to use the puppet tool at all, I'll link some tutorials in the description. The next one is wiggle effects. These aren't a tool at all, they're effects, so you have to look up them in the effects present. I usually only use wiggle position or wiggle rotation. Wiggle position I'll sometimes use on the eyes, just to make it kind of wiggle a bit. It looks really good if, say, you have shocked eyes and they're just like wiggling. I don't really know how to explain this that much. And then the wiggle rotation I usually use for eyebrows or eyelids or whatever, just to get like a little bit of rotation. It looks nice sometimes. Again, if it's like they're shocked, it usually looks good with that expression. The next tool is the track matte, which basically what track mattes are is like, say if you made a star and you wanted that star to be a certain pattern, so you wanted the pattern to be cut out in that star, you would do on the top layer the star shape and then the bottom layer the pattern, and you would do the track matte, you go to the first one, alpha matte. So how does that go with animating? Well, the only time that I've really used it for animating is with the eyes. Say if you're moving the pupil and you're just moving them and it goes out of the eye whites and you want it to stay in the eye whites because, I don't know, it doesn't look that good when pupils are outside the eye. Then you can just mask out the eye and then use a track matte on the pupil so that it stays in the cornea, or not the cornea, what am I talking about? You know. Okay, so the next tool is the parent tools, which again is not in the toolbar. It's a little swirly thing on the layers. What that's good for is if you're moving like arms or legs or fingers or something where you have joints. So I guess the best way I can explain how to use it is like, say you're moving an arm. You have like the top part of your arm that's connected to your shoulder, and then you have the bottom half that's connected to your hand, and then you have your hand. So that's 3 parts of an arm. So you'd have your top half of your arm, and when your top half moves up, your bottom half of the hand moves up with it. And then say if you want your bottom half to move, like lean in too, rotate in, then you would want to use the parent tool to connect the bottom half of your arm to the top half of your arm, and you do your hand to your top half of your arm, and then you would rotate them. That was probably way more confusing. I'll have a diagram and hopefully that'll make it make sense, but it basically makes it so that it moves along with it when you go on a certain layer. That doesn't make any sense either, does it? Okay, I'm sorry if these explanations suck. Okay, the final tool that I usually use when I am doing animations is shape layers, which again isn't really a tool. Shape layers are really good for when you want to fill up a certain, like a space. So say if you're doing an eye blink and your eye is going to the bottom of your lash and you need something to fill up the, like, go over the pupil, and you can use shape layers. And if you want to animate shape layers, you just have to go to the contents, the shape number and path and the keyframe path, and then you can keyframe it from there. And that is about all for the tools. I am so sorry if that made absolutely no sense. I am not good with my words at all. I'll have visuals. Hopefully those will make up for what I can't really explain. Yeah, so I'll see you in part 2 where I'll actually animate.